Okay. Pluto, everything with Pluto is somewhat hidden. And there's a demonization of Pluto as Hades, which has been correlated with the Christian devil. And that adds another layer of baggage, but I want to start to eliminate those layers. Ready or not, Pluto is coming in hot. Not really coming in hot, but it's coming in. Pluto symbolizes a dimension of our lives that is deep, somewhat mysterious, complex, and when it's moving signs, it's a slow ramp up. It doesn't change overnight. Pluto's going back and forth, Capricorn, Aquarius, Aquarius, Capricorn, before it finally lands in Aquarius, where it'll be for 20 years. And there's some things I recently discovered that have changed the way I think about Pluto, and these things might surprise you. First things first, Pluto as the unseen. Sometimes powerful and transformative things have to happen to us in order to force that change. And those things would not have happened if we were left to our own devices, because humans are creatures of habit. We resist change. We want to feel comfort and stability. When those changes that are necessary are resisted, it creates a pressure and a tension. It becomes more challenging the more we resist. But what I'm saying is that these unseen positive results can come from the Pluto experiences, and it's behind that push that we don't really quite understand when it's happening to us. So Pluto, of course, is the Roman name for the god of the underworld, and the Greek version of the god is Hades. Hades is to the immortals as Jan is to the Brady Bunch. Jan was the middle sister in this family, and she had a glamorous older sister, and she had a cute little baby sister, and Jan was just sort of like in the middle. She felt totally invisible. Well, Hades has these two brothers. He has Zeus, which is kind of like Marcia, and he has Poseidon, which is kind of like Cindy, you know, the analogy stops there. But together the three brothers work to overthrow the monstrous Titan Kronos. And there's this epic battle in the sky for over everything, and after the battle they beat him. Spoiler alert. So Zeus was given the sky, Poseidon was given the ocean, and Hades got the underworld. In Homer's The Odyssey, Achilles says, "I'd rather slave on earth for another man, some dirt poor tenant farmer that scrapes to keep alive, than rule down here over all the breathless dead." So let's just say this is not the best job. It's not the best real estate to be gifted. Hades never tries to get out of it, so he's the ruler of the underworld. Hades doesn't even get the title of Olympian. He doesn't get called that, even though he's concurrent with the other Olympians. So it just puts him further on the fringes apart from everyone else. And there's no sacred place for Hades in Olympus. He's confined to his domain in the underworld, and yet he doesn't even try to get another gig. He just like, okay, that's my lot. All right, that's my place. In ancient Greece, there aren't that many shrines to Hades compared to the other gods. There are very few Hades statues being excavated from the underground in Greece. So either there weren't that many made, or they're way, way, way under the ground, which also could make a lot of sense. Point number 2 that surprised me, Pluto is impartial and fair. Hades was known as impossible to bribe. Could not bribe the dude. And being the lord of the underworld, you know, he was seen to be a little bit cold-hearted because people would just keep pleading for their lost loved ones to be returned to life. Nobody wants to lose a loved one. Part of his job requirement was to keep the order of nature and maintain the cycle of life. Any punishment that Hades in mythology doles out is not out of bitterness or jealousy or revenge or rage. They got what they paid for, basically. One of my favorite astrologers is Stephen Arroyo. Interesting fellow. Anyway, Stephen Arroyo says, Pluto transits always bring some kind of separation from people, things, or activities, but Pluto acts on a level that's far deeper than that of mere transitory phenomenon. Whether or not they are external changes at that time, the meaning of the experience is never starkly obvious, for the changes at the deepest psychic level are so long-lasting and profound that the analytical mind cannot grasp their true purpose. What does that mean? Well, it means we don't have a lens long enough to understand what the purpose is until enough time has passed, and then we retrospectively look back. Have you ever heard of Sisyphus? Well, Sisyphus, I'll sound like I have a lisp. Sisyphus is that guy who has to push a massive rock up the hill for eternity. And you know how he got stuck doing that? Sisyphus died, and he argued to Hades that he wasn't buried properly. So Hades allows him to leave the underworld to go fix his burial situation. And then Sisyphus has to go back. I mean, he's supposed to be dead. So Hades sends Death out to go get Sisyphus, but Sisyphus traps Death and holds him captive so he can't take him back to the underworld. And Death being captured meant that Death couldn't do his job. So all the things that were supposed to die became out of balance. They didn't die. If something doesn't die, something new can't come. Long story short, Sisyphus was punished with the rock and the hill for eternity, but it wasn't Hades who punished him. It was Zeus who did this in an override. Hades at this point was still just like, okay, try to be fair to Sisyphus, it's his own darn fault. The third thing I learned that surprised me is that Pluto is steadfast and loyal. Pluto will stick with us through a lifetime. It's a lifetime companion, and it's chipping away loyally on those personal pain points through transits, through activations of our natal Pluto position as well. Zeus and Poseidon, Hades' two brothers, were widely known for their affairs. They had a lot of affairs. But Hades is not known for this. Hades was loyal to his wife Persephone. There are 2 points in which Hades' loyalty could be questioned. Minth and Luce. Minth. It's like the fifth. Minth? Okay, Minth and Luce. But there's no explicit timeline to these affairs, so they can be likely placed before Hades' marriage to Persephone. At one point, Hades fell in love with Luce. She was an ocean nymph, and he took her to the underworld. And when she died, her life came to an end. Hades changed her into a poplar tree in Elysium. The poplar tree became a sacred symbol to Hades, and this shows that he really honored his relationship with her. And then Minth, it seems, was a past lover of Hades, and apparently when Hades married Persephone, Minth became jealous, and she started bragging all over the place that she could win Hades back as a lover. But Hades didn't even respond. He just whatever. But Persephone, his wife, was not taking any of this crap. She retaliated and turned Minth into a mint plant. And any gardener that accidentally plants mint in their garden in the ground will tell you that it can be incredibly annoying and difficult to get rid of. So it tracks. Mint and Minth, difficult to deal with. The fourth thing I learned about Pluto that was surprising is that Pluto can help us become the hero of our own lives. If you think of your life as a journey, and why not? This is an esoteric, fringy, weird channel, so I will enact the hero's journey, trademark Joseph Campbell, as my right. If you think of your life as a hero's journey, there will be times of great struggle. There will be times of ease. There will be times of pain. There will be times of pleasure. Lots of things happen in a life. Underlying this entire journey is a consistent tune, played by Pluto, bringing you back to this path that you're supposed to be on of transformation over a lifetime. The reward is a complete regeneration. It's a rebirth. It's a transformation over time. But this is not a cheap ticket item. This is expensive. My pal Stephen Arroyo says something profound. This regeneration changes willfulness, compulsiveness, and ruthlessness into a consciously usable power with great intensity, which then manifests as a penetrating insight, understanding of subtle forces, often resulting in knowledge years ahead of its time, and the use of the will to promote creative actions. A lot of us are like this. I was like this for sure. Strong-willed, compulsive, obsessive, ruthless at times. And over time, it's all powerful, but it's misdirected power. We can take that intensity and manage it, manifest it into something subtler, something more insightful, something more useful, something more empowered. Cue the game show music. Here's the lightning round, folks. There are 3 times in mythology where Pluto helped the hero. First one happened when Hercules was doing his 12 labors, and one of the labors was to go steal Hades' dog, the 3-headed dog, from the underworld and bring it to the land of the living. Hades agrees to allow Hercules to walk his dog as long as the dog is returned safely and unharmed to the underworld afterwards. Number 2, Perseus. Perseus is the one that defeated the Medusa, and he was allowed by Hades to have the Helm of Darkness, which was a helmet that made Perseus invisible, and that way he could easily slay the monsters on his quest. So he was helpful to that dude too. The third example here is Orpheus. Orpheus had a wife who died, and Orpheus was devastated. He went down into the underworld to try to get her back. And through the underworld, as he was searching for her, he had a song that he was singing full of sorrow and pain and loss. And Hades heard the song. He was so moved by this that he actually cried an iron tear. He allowed Orpheus to take his wife out of the underworld under one condition, that Orpheus was not allowed to look back at his wife until they'd stepped out of the underworld. If he looked back at her, he would lose her again to the underworld. And, Orpheus looked. She was lost to the underworld again, but it was not Hades' fault. Orpheus did not listen to him. He warned him. And one last thing about Pluto/Hades is that when a hero dies, Hades is the guardian of their soul, and he rewards them with Elysium. Elysium is the final resting place for those who lived good, honorable lives. It just seems fair and balanced. Like, if you do the right thing, you get the reward. If you don't, you have to pay the consequences. Pluto experiences break things down in order for some form of renewal, for healing, for transformation, symbolic death, a journey through the underworld, searching for the answer, finding the answer, and then being reborn into the living world, fresh, different, new in some way. Pluto's hard to sway for a reason, because we want things to be the way we want them to be, but Pluto knows the way it has to be. Holding on to these forms, these old forms, fighting for them, to keep that same haircut, to keep those outdated ways, those feelings, those relationships that have run their course, whether they were good relationships or bad. Sometimes it's just the end. You want to hold it. Understanding that those things are gonna come into our life and maybe go can help us have more grace for the Pluto experience overall. Another astrologer named Carl Payne Toby said, "Never fear chaos, because out of chaos something is always born. Instead of worrying about a chaotic situation, I await the birth. When your mind becomes chaotic, or even when my mind is, it's because it is impossible to see the whole." That seems to be the theme. We're socially conditioned to fear chaos and pain and uncertainty and change. If the decision's been made and your old foundations are ripe for releasing, then one way to ride through is to adapt yourself to whatever situations arise, because this is a transition period and the destruction leads to new creation. Pluto gets a bad reputation because it's related to fear and death and the unknown and chaos and uncertainty and darkness. Justifiable. They're scary things. But the archetype of Pluto is one of management. It's one of guidance through the underworld. Pluto's a fair judge. Pluto is loyal. Pluto experiences, I don't want to understate that Pluto experiences can be really rough. But the worst things that happen to us, often, if we're honest, create the most opportunity for growth. It's complicated, it's complex. I've talked to a lot of people who've had horrible things happen in their lives, and a lot of them look back over time and they can pinpoint how those things have shaped them, made them who they are, and that they wouldn't trade those experiences because they wouldn't be who they are now without them. It's more hopeful this way to think about Pluto as more than just evil or death or destruction or challenge. Pluto is more than that. The house position of your natal Pluto placement is where you can find a clue to where you might be living out an old pattern of behavior that's leading to some pain and suffering in your life. This can reveal where we have a little bit more work to do at deeper levels of our being. It's kind of a long story. It's a long narrative arc, the Pluto story in our life. Pluto is power, and that natal position of our Pluto is a point where we have power, but it's a power from the past, and over time, Pluto experiences reveal that the time has come for that power to be used in a new way, a different way. The question is, how can we evolve when we're chained to old ways, old behaviors, old psychological scripts? If you want to know your Pluto placement through the houses, I will link that in the description below, and you can just click on that. It's got all the 12 houses. Look up where Pluto's going to be headed and look up where Pluto's been and reflect a little bit, see what you think about it. For me, Pluto's been going through the 3rd house, and it's all about communication and becoming a better communicator. And it's definitely changed me. It's transformed me. I hope this was helpful for you. I like you just the way you are. I will talk to you next time. Goodbye.